My name is Philip Coppens from the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, and you're listening to Unknown Origins Radio.
We live in a world filled with the unknown. Ghosts and spirits wander through our physical dimension. Undiscovered creatures lurk in the shadows, and strange lights and craft seem to dominate our skies. Modern science refuses to acknowledge their existence, yet credible eyewitnesses are convinced these things are real, and it's up to independent researchers to search for the truth. Welcome to Unknown Origins Radio.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Unknown Origins Radio, where we talk about everything having to do with the strange and paranormal. I'm your host, Mark Johnson, and joining me is our lovely co-host, Lauren DePinto. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I was wondering about you for about a second. I thought they abducted you.
That's what happens when you start off the show on mute, people. I coughed a little bit, and I was muted my microphone, and then I started gabbing away, and there's silence. You know, that's the worst thing you can have on radio is silence. But, you know, we are a professional program, so we cannot have that happen, folks. So, you know, I learned my lesson. But welcome, everyone, to the program tonight. Unfortunately, our other co-host, Carrie Ann Versace, is not joining us tonight. I hear she had a little accident at a softball game, so I hope she's okay. I don't have any more word than that.
Oh, that's terrible. You can get really beat up at a softball game, I'll tell you.
Well, you know, with the weather that's been here, you know, it seems like all I've done this year is complain about the weather in one form or another. But
yeah, what's up with that?
I had no idea. This is how out of touch I was. You know, first of all, I hope you had a great weekend because I worked my ass off. I was really busting my hump because my wife is a caterer and I help out when we do the catering. We had a huge wedding on Saturday, and I was so busy doing all that, I had no idea that there was what they called, what were they calling it? A dry hurricane hit, you know, down Maryland and D.C. and South Jersey and just like caused mass destruction.
Oh, it was unbelievable. I have family down there, down right outside of D.C., and they had to evacuate. They had to leave. They're in their condos, and there's no, you know, you have no air conditioning. You have no air conditioning. You have kids, and you have to get out of there. So they hit the road, and it came up to New Jersey.
It's amazing because I had family calling me, asking me if I'm okay, and I go, I'm perfectly fine. Of course, I'm up in North Jersey. I'm sitting out in 90-degree heat, you know, beautiful clear blue sky. At least a nice breeze was blowing in, so it didn't feel too hot. And it was a beautiful day, not knowing that, you know, just 3 hours down south, they were getting their butts kicked.
Oh, yeah, it was pretty ugly down there. And we just had some crazy weather just before, what was it, yesterday, with the hail. There was hail up in Butler, which is that's in between me and you, I guess. Right between our houses, and there were good sized hail coming down. It was unbelievable, and I thought for sure that we would get our baseball game canceled. And no, we had bright sunny sun and beautiful weather, and just completely passed us by.
You know, I'm not one of these people who worries constantly about 2012, but I have to tell you, there's something not right with this year. There's just so much not going right weather-wise. It is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, we would be having 90 and 100-degree days here in North Jersey in June. We normally don't get that till August. It's just this insane wind and weather, and just, I don't know. It's freaky to me. I just don't get it, and I hope this is only temporary because, you know, once December 21st, 2012 hits, you know what's going to happen? December 22nd is going to hit, and then 23rd and 24th, and life goes on, people.
And life does. Absolutely, absolutely. But you know what I wonder, too? What if the weather's like this now? What is it going to be in like 5 years from now?
I don't... I think I do believe to a certain extent in global warming. Right. I know they're disproving a lot of it, but at the same time, I also don't trust these scientists coming out and saying anything. They'll tell the public whatever they want to hear to calm people down and make everybody believe everything's status quo so that they can continue, doing business as usual. Right. So I'm getting very cynical in my old age. But there's just so much going on tonight. Actually, these days, The zombie apocalypse continues.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I can't believe it.
Another story out of China. Just a couple of days ago, a bus driver goes nuts, gets out of his bus, stops a car, a woman's driving, pulls the lady out of her car, knocks her to the ground, starts eating her face.
I saw the pictures. Did you see the pictures?
Yes, I did. What the F is up with that? I mean, seriously.
I don't know. But does it make you wonder, too, if some of this stuff is staged? You know what I mean? Just to draw attention, just to get it into the news, just to say, okay, now we're putting China on the map now.
But how can you fake eating somebody's face off?
That's true. She did have some extensive damage where she has to get some plastic surgery on her lips, I believe. Was it her lips and her nose?
Yeah, they said that she needed extensive plastic surgery to repair the damage. And then something else interesting came up, too. This whole bath salts craze is starting to fall apart. You know, the media picked up on that. They ran with it, and they're saying, oh, yes, it's bath salts that's causing all these problems. That's why people are going crazy. But the truth is that bath salts, or whatever this drug, they tested, they got the toxicology report back on that first crazy guy who ate the face off the homeless guy in Miami. Nope, no bath salts in his system. None. No hard drugs in his system at all. He had a little bit of marijuana in his system. That was it. Now,
so where did they derive that, though, from? Was it his claim? I had too much bath salt?
No, remember, they shot him dead. They shot him dead. How would they know? Somebody which makes me question, where did that come from in the media, this whole bath salts thing? You know, again, the guy only had pot in his system. Now, granted, I know pot gives you the munchies, but I don't think that it gets you go, oh, I'm hungry. I think I'm going to go eat that guy's face. It just...
Yeah, no.
it's I'll tell you something. You know, this is where I'm going to throw something weird out there. I'm not saying I believe this, but I'm finding it too strange. Too many incidents around the country and now around the world of people going insane at the drop of a hat and attacking and eating people. It's almost like what you see out of 28 Days Later. Or even, you know, I'm a big Firefly fan, Firefly and Serenity, so I mentioned the Reavers. You know, it sounds like Reavers. Right. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if there's some kind of either environmental or chemical reaction that is hitting people and causing certain people to lose it. You know, whether it's being done intentionally, and, you know, I'm going to throw that out there. Maybe this is intentional. Maybe this is some type of biological warfare testing.
Testing, absolutely.
I don't trust, you know, I don't trust the government. I don't trust anybody. So, you know, I have to throw that out there as a possibility because I can understand one person going nuts. Okay. But right now we have how many different cases in the last couple of months of people going crazy like this?
Oh, we have a good handful, don't we? Isn't there a website? Didn't Carrie Ann mention there was a website that you can go to and you can actually map it out?
Yeah,
you know, where it is across the country, across the world, really.
Yeah, so some guy out there put like a world map and he marked every single location where these things are happening. And I haven't seen that site. I'm going to have to look it up to, you know, be interesting to see if there's any patterns there.
Yeah, there could be, and it reminds me of the noises that were happening. Remember the sounds that were heard all over the world, and they couldn't explain that. That was debunked, wasn't that?
No, that was never debunked.
Still, really?
Well,
no.
Here's the thing: they come out and they try to debunk it, and their explanations that they come up with are the most lame, laughable explanations that I've ever heard. I don't buy it for a second. I don't buy half of what the media tells us. And whenever something strange happens and people has experiences, and then they come out, well, a scientist said today that, you know, this was caused by pressure in the earth that was doing... No, pressure in the earth doesn't sound like horns blasting, you know, from mega speakers, you know, through the sky.
Right.
You know, I've lived through major earthquakes. I've lived through those types of seismic anomalies. And, you know, it sounds like a freight train barreling down on you, and then the whole world starts shaking and falling apart. Not when you see these videos of guys standing in the woods listening to these blasting horns and coming from the sky. It doesn't make any sense. There's just something weird going on. There is.
And back to the whole zombie, you know... it could be some type of conspiracy theory. It could be something governmental. You know, you never know. Watch, now the show's going to drop and it's going to get fuzzy and we're going to have technical difficulties just because we brought that up, right? Sorry, government, but it could be.
No, I'm not sorry. I'm like I said, the older I get, the more belligerent I get. You know, it's just one of these days. You know, we have Richard Dolan on on our network here at the Global Radio Alliance. If you don't get a chance to listen to his show on Saturday nights, I was tuning in listening to him talk last Saturday, and you know, he makes a lot of great points. Especially, you know, he has his book After Disclosure, and we're going to have to get Richard on the program here sometime soon, and to talk to him about this, because the amount of secrecy that the government uses to cover up these things that they just don't want us to know about, to keep the status quo, keep everybody calm, keep people, you know, buying their products and driving our cars. And
that's right. Yep. Stopping at McDonald's and everything is just, you know, normal as far as we know.
Right. It's just, you know, I'm the searcher for the truth. I really want to know what is really going on out there. I truly believe our universe and our reality, we've got it wrong. I think it's much stranger and much more fascinating than we're being told. You know, because whenever we try to look into something different, or we're trying to find an explanation, you know, we have the debunkers or the people coming in saying, well, it's just this, and that. You know, now go about your business. You know,
right.
be good little sheeple. And
sheeple.
Bad. Like a Falkland Island war bride. Are you my daddy? How was that, dear? Not bad. Sorry, I'm stealing Robin Williams there. Very old Robin Williams. Oh, good golly, oh Molly. Well, we're going to have a great show for everyone tonight.
Yep.
We're going to be talking about paranormal investigations a little bit later on after the break, different types of equipment and new techniques. Now, you know, there's a lot of these paranormal shows out there, but a new show just started. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it on Friday night on the National Geographic Channel. They have Chasing UFOs.
Oh, no. I have to add that to my DVR list.
Well, actually, that's starring Aaron Ryder from formerly of Destination Truth. And Aaron is actually going to be a guest on our show at the end of July 30th. Yay. She'll be on our show, so we get to talk to her about her new show, Chasing UFOs, along with you know, her adventures on Destination Truth with Josh Gates. And I was watching the show the other night, and not bad. I've heard a lot of people blasting it. Even one of our former guests, Dr. Barry Taft, thought it was an abomination. But I watch it. It's really it's exactly like Finding Bigfoot, but just replace Bigfoot with UFOs. And yeah, it's watchable. I like it so far. It's only, you know, we've only had 2 episodes they showed, so I'm willing to watch it for a while and see where it goes.
Good. I'm curious about it. Absolutely. I like all of those shows. You have to give them a chance. You have to watch them a few times before you can write them off. You know, because everything starts out kind of fresh and new, and you know, they're just getting their gist, and then, you know, as you go down a couple episodes, you're like, wow, this is really good. And that's how it all starts.
The one show I'm really looking forward to, and I think it comes back out next week, is Destination Truth. Right up there with Ghost Adventures. Between those two are my 2 favorite shows. I just love them, and I'll tell you why I like them better than most of the other ghost shows or other paranormal shows that are out there. It's called personality. And, you know, not to bag on some of the other shows who've been around for a very long time, that have gotten just very dry and stale, and okay, we're going to this location, we're going to, ooh, what's that noise? Do you hear that noise? No, you know, you have Josh Gates, who's a wild man.
He's so funny. He really is. He throws a lot of levity into that show.
He is a hoot. And love watching him and him interacting with his team. And, you know, the same reason why I like Ghost Adventures. You know, you see the personalities of the people, and I think that's what a lot of shows are missing, because with any show, whether it's a drama, whether it's a reality show, you've got to care about the people you're watching. And if you're not being given any you know, emotional attachment to these people, then it gets boring. And I understand trying to stay away from fake drama, but I do want to enjoy watching people doing these investigations. And that's one of the great things about Josh Gates is, you know, I could watch him all the time. And so I hope he continues doing Destination Truth for a while.
Oh, me too. You know what I love about that show? The work that he does, the investigations that he where he goes, the locations. I don't think that I can do that. I don't think I can go deep into the Amazon and get on a boat and swim around with snakes and but I like to watch it. I like to watch it. I like to see the different cultures and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I have to say I look forward to the new season.
You're living vicariously through Josh Gates.
I am. I mean, it's pretty neat. I have to say, it's a very unique show. Very cool.
Right. Well, hopefully I'm looking forward to seeing that. And then, of course, we can talk to Aaron later this month. And we've also got a lot of new guests. I'll be honest with you, folks. I mean, we're not going to give too much away, but we've got guests booked solid almost through the end of August so far. And we've got some really big names that we are working on to bring onto the show to talk to, and so you all can listen to. So we're really excited about this, and this is just a really exciting time to be a part of the Global Radio Alliance. This is such a great network. We're really happy we made the switch and came over here, and between Race and Royce and Jason and all the team, we can't thank you guys enough for having our little show on here.
And I know Race is hanging in the shadows over there, so I hope you're smiling.
I just real quick before we go,
a Chevy grill.
So cute.
Before we go to break, I see Dawn in the chat room said she missed the first 5 minutes. Not sure if we brought up the zombie attack in China. Yes, we did. We did get that. So if you want to catch us back on when we have the archive on the show, you can hear us talk about that. But anyway, we are going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk to our guest about lots of different paranormal equipment and new techniques for capturing EVPs and investigating the paranormal. So don't go away. We're going to be right back here on Unknown Origins Radio, here on the Global Radio Alliance. And welcome back to Unknown Origins Radio with Mark and Lauren. Carrie Ann we still haven't heard any more information. We're just hoping she's doing okay tonight. If we find out anything else, we'll let you all know. But I'm sure she's going to be just fine. She's rough and tumble.
She is, yeah. We miss her, and I hope she's not hurt, because I know my daughter took a knee to the softball, and she's got a nice big egg. So we're sending her a good, positive, healing energy.
Yes, very much so. Well, we're going to get into to our show tonight. Really excited to introduce our guest. Our guest tonight is David Rountree. Now, David is the Director of Scientific Paranormal Investigative Research, Information, and Technology. It's a paranormal research laboratory dedicated to the design and build of detection and data recording of environmental aspects of paranormal phenomenon. That is a mouthful. But he's also the co-director of the New Jersey Paranormal Research Group, which does investigations and experimentations around New Jersey. So, David, welcome to the show. How are you tonight?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. One of the things that I've admired about your work is you've done a lot of work on the technical side. There's so many research groups out there, and I have to admit I'm kind of like them because I don't have a lot of technical expertise. I use a lot of the equipment that comes out, everything from, the cameras, IR cameras, thermal imaging cameras, and the visual aspect I'm good with. I love EVP. I think EVP is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that we get. But at the end of the day, most people, including myself, record and we listen. If we hear a voice, we post it and say, oh, look, this is what we got. And we don't really get much into the whole analysis of the actual recording itself. And you have a history with sound as an audio and acoustic engineer. So you're trained into experimenting and listening to these audio recordings and looking at it at a much deeper level than we are. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, my early experiments with EVP, back then it was called the raw dive voice, was trying to understand mechanically what was going on. What was the mechanics of an EVP? What was causing it? What created it? And I knew for for a fact that it wasn't sound, because sound is mechanical energy, and if it was sound, we could hear it. And we don't hear it. So it had to be something that was interfacing with the electronic equipment and causing the electronic equipment to detect it and pick it up, and then, of course, record it. And when you begin to look at it, there's only really one thing that it could have been, and that was EMF in the audio spectrum. So, bearing this in mind, I tried to prove that it was EMF many years ago, back in the late 70s, but I really couldn't prove that it was EMF, but I could prove that it wasn't sound. That's pretty much what I did using a bell jar experiment, where we put a dynamic microphone inside of a bell jar, vacated the air from the bell jar, and we're still able to record EVPs. So that told us that it wasn't sound, that it wasn't acoustical energy at all, that it was something else. Now, I suspected that it was EMF for many, many years. I just couldn't prove it. And it wasn't until, early in 2001, 2002, that time frame where we were actually able to assemble the equipment together to literally prove that it was EMF that was causing EVPs. And that, of course, like you, I believe that EVP is probably our most compelling piece of evidence in paranormal investigating. Having said that, the next question was, obviously, where's it coming from? Mm-hmm. Of course, we did a great deal of research using RF spectrum analysis, doing a lot of different things to try to determine what the source exactly was. And just by examining EVP, it opened the whole door to several other discoveries, which I think are very important discoveries, such as the EMF appears to be emerging into the environment, meaning it's just kind of popping into the environment at a single point somewhere in a room with no particular obvious source. So this was a huge clue as well. Then we started to, I built a device that was basically called a EMF quadrilator, which essentially uses 4 detectors where we will scan an area that's in front of these 4 detectors, and we can locate the emergence point of the EMF as it's coming into the room. And by having that exact point of emergence, we can then focus a battery of test equipment at that point where the EMF is emerging. And we found some very interesting things doing that. One of the things we discovered was that there were gravity fluctuations at that point, and not just gravity from beneath our feet, but gravity along 3 different axes. We found that there were time fluctuations where the speed of time actually fluctuated. We found that there were gamma radiation bursts. We found elevated ion count levels. We found drops in temperature. We found drops in barometric pressure. We found elevated levels of static energy. I mean, the list goes on and on. We found that there was this localized area that was an anomaly, that things were just doing crazy things in a very localized area, and it made no sense whatsoever. Until we started looking at near-death experiences and taking into account what people experience when they have a situation where they pass over to the other side momentarily. They travel down this long, dark tunnel and come out with a bright light at the other end of it, which immediately made me think wormhole. And we started looking at the data, and the only thing in science really that could explain the phenomena we were seeing was if there was some type of wormhole formation occurring.
Wow.
So that started a whole great deal of experimentation into where we now sort of are convinced that this wormhole formed. It is probably a conduit to an adjacent universe, and probably one that is based on pure energy instead of energy and matter. And the wormhole itself is kind of a unique kind of wormhole in which it has a single throat, but it has a dual tube construct in that it is two-way. It allows two-way transportation of energy back and forth. So, but the only thing in science that would explain it would be a wormhole. Now, this may not be what we're dealing with, but if it isn't, then what we're dealing with isn't explainable in known science at this point. I believe that it's a wormhole. I believe that it's a very special kind of wormhole. I believe it connects our universe to an adjacent universe and allows this interface to occur that allows this, I want to say, intelligent consciousness to interact with what we are doing and where we're at, and that's what we call a haunting.
That is absolutely incredible, and you know what? It makes, to me anyway, perfect sense. Because whenever we seem to interact with whatever these spiritual energies are, and I'm of the school of where I've taken a huge step back from traditional thoughts of what spirits are, what ghosts are, and I'm not 100% convinced it's just the spirit of a person floating around. I'm accepting more in terms of multiple dimensions of reality existing on the same plane. Maybe those rifts or tears or a wormhole is where these things are coming in and going out. A lot of times when I've captured visual anomalies that we've been able to prove are not dust or pollen or light reflections or anything like that, you know, these things seem to come in, they fade in, and then they fade out. And is the energy dissipating? Is it changing form? Or is it slipping into our reality briefly before it slips back out through these rifts or wormholes?
That's exactly right. And the thing that's so cool about the theory, and we've pretty much developed it from a hypothesis to a theory now, based on repeated experiments and the same data sets occurring, we think also that this would explain a residual haunt where people are seeing a moment in history replay itself. The interesting thing about a wormhole is it doesn't just connect two places in space, but it deals in space-time, so it connects two places in time as well. So what could very well be happening is that we could be seeing the exact historical event as it took place in history on the holographic boundary of that wormhole, so that literally we were seeing back to, say we're at Gettysburg, we were seeing back to 1863 when the battle was actually occurring. And we're literally witnessing it as it occurred in history, only we're here looking back in time to see it.
So in other words, it's very likely that we're not seeing a recording like a lot of people think of residual haunting, but we're actually seeing the live event as it's happening.
Well, see, here's the thing. There's absolutely zero evidence to support the original theory that a residual haunting is somehow stored in the environment. There's absolutely zero evidence to support that. However, there's a great deal of evidence to support wormhole capability could actually connect 2 points in time. I mean, it's theoretical conceivable. So if we look at it that way, it's actually a valid explanation that if a wormhole does exist, and if what we are witnessing is a wormhole, then it's very possible that's the explanation for what we're seeing. It may be that when we see a ghost, a full-body apparition, we are seeing the energy of that intelligent consciousness project itself on that holographic boundary as a holographic projection, so that we're seeing a three-dimensional projection in front of us that, of course, you can move your hands through, that is slightly transparent maybe, that can interact with the environment, so to speak, but it's merely a three-dimensional projection of energy, which is why when you move your hand through it, there's nothing there. There's no matter. There's no mass. It's simply energy in the form of a projection. And that's assuming that what we're dealing with is an intelligent consciousness, which the anecdotal evidence seems to point to.
Now, David, let me just ask you, these wormholes, are they open all the time, or is there something that triggers it that opens up the wormhole?
Absolutely not. The wormhole is basically a very limited time frame of existence. It occurs because a sufficient amount of exotic matter keeps it stable. Exotic matter meaning matter that has negative mass. Exotic matter was thought to be a total pipe dream until small amounts of it were recently created at CERN. Exotic matter has been proven to be able to exist. That being the case, then it's very easy for a wormhole to open up and to be held stable for a period of time. Now, interestingly, what happens is we're getting these gamma radiation bursts. Now, gamma is extraordinarily high energy, normally associated with radioactive activity, such as uranium-235 or plutonium or things of that nature. Well, what we're getting isn't a long, scheduled decay of radiation over a long period of time. We're getting a burst, a high-energy burst, which is indicative not of radiation material, but of an annihilation occurring. A subatomic annihilation is occurring that generates this gamma radiation burst, these bursts. So what we think is going on is when these wormholes open, immediately the exotic matter begins to react to our own matter, just with air molecules. Mm-hmm. And at a subatomic level, they began to annihilate. And once the exotic matter level drops to a certain point, the wormhole will collapse and the paranormal event will be over. Often there are associated pops, audible pops associated with what may be the wormhole collapsing.
That's actually...
There are other things that occur. For example, plasma orbs form. These plasma orbs form based on these high-energy discharges created by these subatomic annihilations. Now, I'm not saying that all the orbs that you see on people's photos are real. By far, they are not. The vast majority of these orbs are, of course, dust or pollen or water vapor or some other foreign particulate matter that is within 4 inches of a camera that's being picked up by the flash, but is too close to the lens to be properly focused by the autofocus mechanism. So it prints as a big orb. How we found these orbs were by using a 2-camera synchronized shoot, where we had 2 cameras set up on tripods in 2 different parts of the room shooting at the same area, and then firing them using a photographer's trigger at the same time in order to capture anything that would print in both cameras in approximately the same location in the room. And of course, it was very easy to determine what was dust and what wasn't dust, because most everything that we got was in one camera, not the other, or they were in different locations in each camera. But occasionally, when we had an event going on, we would capture a glowing orb that was in the same physical spot in the room in both pictures from both cameras. Now, that wasn't the proof. What the proof was actually capturing one of these and sampling it and measuring the energy potential inside of it. I had a good idea that it was going to be some type of cold plasma. Reason being that hot plasma would be extremely noticeable to human beings and witnesses, because hot plasma, is like what the sun is. It generates a tremendous amount of heat. Cold plasma, on the other hand, can be room temperature, and you would never notice it unless you came into contact with cold plasma. And if cold plasma, if this is what it is, it has to be held stable by some encapsulating field or containment. Neon, for example, is cold plasma. When we see a neon sign, that's cold plasma. And you can touch a neon tube when it's lit, and of course it's cool to the touch. It doesn't get hot. Well, this cold plasma is held surprisingly stable by an encapsulating electromagnetic field. The same exact thing that we are measuring with EMF meters and seeing all around us. So the EMF stabilization of this plasma allows it to be relatively short-lived, but to appear as a byproduct of this energy discharge. So I actually built this device that was based on a shop vac and a 100-foot extension cord and a long PVC pipe with a coupler in the center with 2 aluminum screens on either side of the coupling when it was shoved together, which created a 1/4-inch gap in the center so that I had a measurement grid. And anything larger than a 1/4 inch, of course, would touch both grids at the same time as it was sucked through the tube on a vacuum cleaner. And it was a comical sight, of course, and quite entertaining to those who watched it. But eventually we captured an orb, and it burned up the meter we were using to try to measure it. So I was like, aha, You know, we have something that's extraordinarily high voltage, but probably extraordinarily low current. And the more we played around and captured them, the more we realized, yes, this is what we're dealing with. It's some type of cold plasma. Interestingly, it shows up in photographs because it is emitting ultraviolet light. It's emitting light in the ultraviolet spectrum. So we don't necessarily can visually see it, although we could probably catch a glimpse of it out of our peripheral vision, because our peripheral vision is more sensitive to UV. But a camera, because it has an extended vision range into the near UV and into low-level UV, without doing anything fancy to it, like removing the UV filter, which is what a full-spectrum camera is, you can still see this manifestation. And it gives off an ultraviolet light based on the radiation that's being generated by the cold plasma. Cool stuff.
Very cool stuff. My gosh. I'd like to be in your basement one day watching this.
Yeah. Well, the lab's in the process of moving to a new location. Hopefully it will be a better location.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, see, David, this is why we're very excited to have you on, because the truth be told, there's so very few real paranormal investigators out there that are aware of this type of study and research. We're all stuck in the basics, and I put myself in that group. I mean, I can take an EVP, run it through Gold Wave, and look at the spectrum, maybe filter a little bit, but that's the extent of my expertise and knowledge. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an audio engineer. So it's refreshing hearing somebody with your background coming in, not only talking about this, but the types of experiments you're running. Now, you mentioned earlier that you were running experiments using a Bell container, and now
bell jar, yeah.
Bell jar, yes. Yeah. And for other people out there who may not have fully understood what he was talking about, is with a jar like that, they suck all the air out of it, so it's a vacuum in there. Now, sound can only travel through air. Through
a medium. Well, it can travel through any medium. In other words, it can travel through water. It can travel through air. But it needs a medium in which to propagate through.
Exactly.
It will not propagate through a medium-less vacuum. So the bell jar doesn't create a full vacuum, but it creates a pretty darn close vacuum. And it's enough to block the audio from propagating. And literally, we borrowed it one night from the University of Florida physics lab, and
borrowed.
Yeah. Well, we sort of borrowed it, yeah. And we used a pump. It had a vacation pump where you vacated the air from the bell jar itself, and it was an old-fashioned bell jar. And I don't even know if they still used it anymore, because it was probably there as a conversation piece, maybe. But we were sure to have it back the next day before classes started in there. So, but yeah, we borrowed it because, it's not every day that you go out and buy a bell jar. However, I've seen some great ones made from the old glass-type water cooler bottles. Remember those?
Yes, I do.
You can take a glass water cooler bottle and a rubber stopper and some tub seal or silicate seal, and you can make a pretty darn good bell jar yourself. And by using a regular type of vacuum pump like that you hand operate, you can literally vacate pretty much most of the air out of it. So
the other thing that I found fascinating is when you're talking about being able to pinpoint where an EVP is actually occurring in the room. There was one time we did an investigation last year of this private home, and one of our we had 3 investigators in the room, and we had a couple of different recorders, and we had an EVP of this young girl's voice kind of appear out of nowhere, and she said, like, closer to you, closer to me, and just repeated it in this sing-song voice. It was Class A, clear as a bell. And then nobody heard it, but one of our investigators actually, Jennifer, she accidentally hit her foot on a chair or a table, and she went, ow. And then you hear the little girl's voice laugh. She giggled, like she thought that was funny. So it was an interactive, intelligent haunting. or EVP. Now, here's what was interesting is we had recorders in different areas of the room, and we could tell the difference in the sound quality and the volume that we were able to pinpoint using triangulation with the recorders to find out where the sound was mostly coming from, because it was closer to one recorder than another. But I'm more fascinated with the fact that you actually have a more scientific method of tracking that.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And the thing is we can actually predict an emergence point where you can locate your recorders by looking for the emerging EMF in the environment, which I think is really cool, because for the first time we can sort of predict where an EVP is going to occur in a limited area, but within an area. So we could literally go into a room and say an EVP is going to be occurring right there, or is occurring as we're speaking, and you could literally run over there with a recorder and capture it, or at least parts of it.
Okay, so you can even anticipate with the energy buildup where an EVP is going to occur.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what is happening is that EMF is emerging. Part of the EMF may not be related to the EVP at all. It may just be a low-frequency carrier wave that we have noticed in other types of paranormal activity, such as when mediums and psychics are getting information. A very similar thing occurs where a EMF carrier wave seems to emerge into the environment carrying information on it that they tend to pick up like some kind of biological television set. And this is another area of research we're working in, how psychics and mediums get their information. And it's all seems to be kind of related.
Hey, David,
which is, kind of cool.
Sorry, I'm stepping on you. I don't mean to step on you. I'm
Go
sorry.
Right.
So would you say that EMFs are the primary source for all EVPs or not?
Yes, I would. And now, remember, there's two kinds of phenomena we deal with. There is electronic voice phenomena, which is generally caused by EMF.
Right.
And then there's audible voice phenomena, which we actually hear.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now, audible voice phenomena is very interesting because it's mechanical energy, which means there has to be sufficient mass associated with its generation to move air. So, if you hear a phantom sound, somewhere there is sufficient mass to move air to make that sound. Interesting thought.
That is a very interesting thought.
It puts new light also, not only with EVPs, but even people who hear footsteps. Like when you're hearing footsteps walking above you, it's something is physically interacting with that environment, causing vibration to the wood, causing sounds to happen, but yet it's still unseen.
Right.
That's right. And that requires mass. Mm-hmm. And that's the important thing to keep in mind here. It requires mass. So somewhere in the environment around you, mass is creating sound. Now, this mass, I would wager, would probably be visible.
So get out your camera.
I'm not real familiar with invisible mass. I mean, mass that's large enough to create audible sound would have some substantial size to it. It wouldn't have to be real large, but it would definitely be big enough to see with the naked eye. So I'm saying when you hear something physically, you need to really pay attention to the environment around you and see if anything is manifesting itself visually. Because I'd be willing to bet that there is visible mass associated with audible voice phenomena.
Now, I've been in several instances in investigations over the years where I've had audible voice phenomena, in fact, audible anomalies happen in the room, some even right next to me. I have to be honest, I've never seen anything. Even times when I've had a camera in the room, I've not picked up on anomalies when these sounds are happening. One time I heard a cat meowing just a few feet away from me, and we had cameras running and we didn't catch anything. But could it also possibly be, even though there may be mass to it, not saying it's invisible, but could it be visible with under a slightly different spectrum of light? Or would it have to be, in your mind, mass that, regular white light could shine and reflect off of?
Well, what is mass? You know what I'm saying? The primary things that we look at that are visible as mass are visible in monochromatic light. I don't know of any single instance of any mass that's invisible in monochromatic light. Now, it may be that there is such a thing, and we just haven't discovered it yet, and maybe that's what's at work here. But in order to assume that, I would have to eliminate every possible other explanation that there is, and that hasn't been done yet. So I can't just jump to a conclusion that it's possible until I eliminate, or we eliminate as researchers, all of the other more known explanations for it. So is it possible? Sure, anything is possible. But the probability is that it's going to be some type of mass that's associated with sight that we can see with monochromatic light. The things that are manifesting in the ultraviolet tend to be energy, tend to be like, for example, the plasma, for example. That's the fourth state of matter. So it is a type of matter that's manifesting in that spectrum. But the reason that it's manifesting in that spectrum is because that is the wavelength of the light it's emitting. Not all matter emits light, but certainly a lot of matter reflects light. So it may be possible in a very abstract way that this matter doesn't reflect white light. That's possible.
It could
But
be
I would
a
want
form
to
of...
eliminate. I would want to eliminate all the more realistic explanations first before I jump to something that's a bit more exotic.
Oh, I totally agree with you there. The only thing I'll throw out there is, just because it's a term that a lot of astronomers and astrophysicists will mention, is called dark matter. They don't know what it is, but they said it accounts for almost 3/4 of the universe because of the way it interacts. It's possible that maybe it's this type of matter might have something to do with it. But again, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there because I've heard of it elsewhere.
And it's very possible. The problem is that the evidence for dark matter is very, very small. There's a very small amount of evidence for dark matter. And I'm not saying that dark matter doesn't exist, because I've speculated a lot of different things about shadow people, for example. I think that a shadow person is comprised of dark biomatter. Now, I can't prove that obviously yet, because just shadow people are such a transitory phenomena and an unpredictable phenomena that I don't know that we will ever be able to gather any real evidence as to what a shadow person is. However, having said that, looking at what's going on, a shadow person doesn't, the ones that I have come into contact with, they don't reflect light. They almost absorb light. It's like light doesn't penetrate where they are. It's black. I mean, and I'm not talking about these things like you see on TV where it's kind of like you see a translucent figure or something walking along. The shadow beings that I've come into contact with are black. I mean, literally black. No light. Mm-hmm. No light whatsoever associated with them. And I think that it's very possible that it may be that these things aren't ghosts at all, that they're a form of life, but that they're a form of life based off of a dark biomatter type material. Yeah, I may be, way wrong, and it's totally speculation, but it's something that I see as being possible. And biomatter, biofields and biomatter were something that were considered pipe dreams and holistic mumbo jumbo just a few years ago. And, not so funny now that they've discovered photons in DNA. So, we're getting closer and closer to saying, yes, there is actually a vital life force, and yes, we may actually be able to measure it. And yes, it isn't just, a bunch of mumbo jumbo, that there may actually be some definitive energy that defines life. So, having said that, it would make sense to me that by the behavior of these shadow beings, they behave as if they're a live creature.
See,
So it's very well possible that there's some type of bio-dark matter, creature.
See, this is why I mentioned earlier that, I'm just fascinated with what I think, we have a lot of it wrong. A lot of us are focusing on too simplistic terms in terms of this paranormal phenomenon, and that the real world that we live in is so much more fascinating and just incredible. What we're going to do, David, we're going to go and take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk to you more about this, and we also want to talk to you about a few of your own encounters. So we will be right back after this break. You're listening to Unknown Origins Radio here on the Global Radio Alliance. We'll be right back. And we're back with Unknown Origins Radio here on the Global Radio Alliance. I'm your host, Mark Johnson, along with my co-host, Lauren DePinto. Hey, Lauren.
Hello, hello. And
we are talking with our guest tonight, David Rountree, who has been just really blowing me away with a lot of the different experimentations that he's done with sound and even measuring the different types of phenomenon that we, as the layman, ghost hunters, tend to go and point our cameras with, point and shoot and click, and that's about the extent of it. Right. But David, you're really pioneering real research, which is so very much badly needed in this field. Now, we mentioned something a little bit off the air during the break, that we had another guest on a couple months ago, Thomas Fusco, who had his book Beyond the Veil, and he had these different theories of what he thought paranormal activity was. And you had mentioned that you're actually working with him.
Yeah, Tom is great. His fundamental theory is supergeometry, and it applies to a lot of different things, from religion all the way through everything. But the part of it that I'm most interested in is, of course, its application in the paranormal. And his theory predicted all of the data that I discovered in doing these experiments. So I have to look at his theory and say, gee, there's something to it. Because I'm out here without a theory, trying to find out what's going on and analyzing the stuff. And of course, then in return, that built my wormhole theory. Well, his theory was totally armchair theoretical generation with no experimentation, and yet it predicts the findings that my experiments have come up with. So, and the interesting thing is I had no idea who Tom was until about, a little over a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, when I helped interview him on another person's radio show. And I pretty much put him through the paces, and was trying to just really stump him up. And man, he held it together, and he knew what he was talking about. And the more I talked to him and started talking about my own work, we started realizing just how parallel the two of our works were. Now, the only thing that we differ in, interestingly enough, is the source. He believes that it's created by an interdimensional interface caused by, a type of a bending of gravity. This bending of time-space, which creates like an interdimensional gap, which he believes that it's something like that. I believe that it's a wormhole. Interestingly, we can now focus on trying to prove which one it is. But everything else in the theory we agree with. I mean, everything else is, as far as, what occurs in the environment and the environmental changes, we're on total agreement with that. And the only thing that we differentiate on is the actual source of the paranormal activity. And we're now working on designing an experiment to prove which one it is. Interestingly enough, his concept is a little more easier to prove than mine is. The bending of space-time is something that can be measured and it can be documented. A wormhole, we're still trying to figure out how to quantify that in the form of data. while we can say what we're encountering is very much like what would occur if a wormhole did form, we can't definitively say it's a wormhole because we're not really sure how to measure that. It's a theoretical construct. His explanation, however, on the other hand, would be fairly simple after giving it a lot of thought to design an experiment around to prove or to disprove. So we've kind of joined forces, and we're working on designing an experiment that would actually prove or disprove whether a bending of space-time is the actual cause of a paranormal event. So it's kind of fascinating. So yeah, it's pretty interesting because Tom is not really a paranormal person at all. I mean, he is really not into the paranormal field. He's never been on a ghost hunt. He's never performed any kind of paranormal research whatsoever. He's just a theoretical kind of physicist, who sits there and he looks at things and he comes up with theories. He's very good at what he does. What's cool is that, because I'm good at what I do, when he comes through with the theories and I come through with the practical, and we put those two together, it bears from some potential exciting discoveries and some exciting proof maybe that may come from this. So I'm pretty excited about the partnership that we're working on right now.
Wow. Sounds like you guys are like the Lennon and McCartney in the physics world.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. I mean, kind of bizarre as that seems.
Yeah, it's a good coupling if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, it works pretty well. I have other partnerships, research partnerships here and there that I'm working on different stuff along different lines with. But, Tom and I, we have something here that may turn into a huge, huge thing in the paranormal, a huge, huge thing, which in turn may also turn into something very huge in physics. So it's kind of a cool thing. I'm not really sure how it's going to turn out, which is even more exciting. So it's great. I don't know if he's going to be right or if I'm going to be right. But in the end, it doesn't matter if we discover the truth. We both win. So it doesn't really matter who's right or who's wrong.
Well, you mentioned earlier in the program about, when talking about wormholes and residual hauntings, what we consider residual hauntings, possibly a rift in space-time that you're actually seeing an actual event rather than a recording. Now,
right.
You mentioned, Tom Fusco and working with him. Have you ever heard of a gentleman named Andrew Basiago?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Yes. Now,
Funny you should mention that. I was just on a show with him on Darkness Radio with
that's right.
Dave.
You were on that show, yes. Because I listened to that episode, and I'm very intrigued with that gentleman. In fact, I'm trying to get him on our show, and I haven't been able to get in touch with him. But, his theories on mirror very much what you were talking about in terms of, holographic imagery projecting past events and being able, as a form of time travel, being able to witness that.
Yeah, he kind of picked up on see, I went on that show too, fully attempting to, discredit this guy. He's a friggin' lawyer, And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, sure, here's a lawyer that's traveled through time, right? Okay, sure, I'll buy that. But I mean, there's something about him that I can't put my finger on it, but there's something uncanny about him. And I can't explain why he knows what he knows or whatever. But I do disagree with him in a couple of things he was saying because, what he is saying would need to be demonstrated to me for me to buy it.
Exactly.
However, some of the other concepts I do believe in, and actually he was very interested in what I was saying because he said that I had a very firm grasp on the concepts of time travel and on what it would take to travel through time. And time is something I've thought a lot about, over the years, about a lot of things, and he actually contacted me afterwards, and we've kind of sort of initiated a contact stage where we're kind of like talking back and forth a little bit. But I would love to discuss it with him more, and I plan on doing that. Interesting fellow, though, indeed.
Definitely, it's worth its own show discussion because it is very, very interesting. But I did like how it does seem to correlate with a lot of your work. Now, Lauren, I know I put you off. I interrupted you. I knew you had a question, so go ahead, get to it.
I did have a question. It was about an encounter that you mentioned in your bio. It seems back, between 85 and 87, you had a series of negative encounters. But they redirected your focus onto the scientific your research. So could you share with us what were the negative encounters?
Well, I'll tell you, it's the subject of my next book that I'm writing with another person who was involved in it with me, Robbie Lunt. It had to do with what you might call a demonic encounter, a demonic entity that was affecting someone that was a friend of his. And he brought me into the situation. Back in those days, I was practicing. I was a practicing shaman. Let's just put it that way. Mm-hmm. And I was really kind of easing Robbie into shamanism. He was like an apprentice to me at the time. And I was breaking him into the world, and this event became part of his training. But the event was a horrific event, and it affected a lot of people, and it actually took the work of a lot of people to get rid of this thing. And the thing is that when we got rid of it, it really wasn't a permanent get rid of it, you know. It was more of a temporary banishment type thing.
I've heard that all too often.
This thing was this thing was extraordinarily old. I mean, Christian stuff didn't work on it. Mm-hmm. We believe that it was associated with ancient Sumer, you know, a Sumerian type of entity.
Jinn?
Nothing traditional. No, it wasn't a jinn. It was predated jinns. I mean, this stuff was Sumerian, you know, ancient Sumerian. You know, the Anuki.
Okay.
Type of beings. And this thing was just insidious. I mean, it was incredible. But like I say, nothing traditional worked on it. Christian methods didn't work on it. Jewish methods didn't work on it. Hindu methods didn't work on it. None of the modern religious methodologies had any effect on it whatsoever. And it turned into a search for what would work. And we had a lot of help from a lot of different people who offered assistance in different ways. And a small core group of people formed, and then it changed because of a certain individual. One of the individuals got too carried away with ego and got in a bit over their head and paid a price for it. And so we had to swap a person out. And it ended up being 4 people banding together at the very end and getting rid of this thing. And it's a fascinating story. Whether people believe it or not is really up to them, but whether they believe it or not, it's an incredibly good story. So we're putting it out as a good story and believe what you want kind of thing with it. And the interesting thing is we had to write it with everybody's real names, and then we had to go through and change everyone's names because we can't get a hold of 90% of the people in the story. So we have to use different names, you know, for those people because we don't have permission to use their names, their real names in it.
I love that search and replace function in Microsoft Word.
Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But, you know, it's not foolproof, so you still have to go through and physically look at everything because we had some things that slipped through just because it was an apostrophe S or it was, you know, something else associated with the name and it didn't get picked up. So it's been kind of a fun thing going through now and changing names in 27 chapters or 26 chapters of the book. But we're almost through with that process. But like I say, it's an entertaining story. It's a story that's going to appeal to a much broader audience than my first book appealed to. I mean, literally housewives will be reading this book. I mean, I'm serious. It's the kind of book that, you know, you're going to pick up, you're going to read, and it's just an incredible story, and it's got everything in it. I mean, you know, it's got everything. So, I mean, it's totally entertaining. It's exciting. It's unpredictable. You just never know where it's going to go, and it's really exciting right up to the very end. So it's a great story. We told it orally for years. I then completely blocked it out of my memory, lost all real detail to it. Robbie contacted me a couple of years ago. He says it's time to write the story. And I knew exactly what he was talking about, but I told him, I said, I've forgotten so much of it. He says, I think it'll come back when we start working on it. And sure enough, we started writing back and forth, and we started with an outline, and then I started dividing it up into chapters, and the next thing you know, we had a book. It all came back. And I just found it was kind of fascinating, the fact that I blocked it entirely out of my memory. And it took us working on it, and he never forgot anything, although there were some details that he had lost. And yet I filled him in, mysteriously enough. When I began reading what he wrote, things would come back to me, and then I would write those, and then that would trigger something back in him, and more detail would come out. And that's how the whole book was built. It was built by each of us stimulating the other into memory, remembering stuff. And a pretty fascinating thing. But a lot of people were injured by this permanently. A lot of people, we don't know if they're dead or alive, literally.
Goodness.
Wow. So it was a pretty heavy ordeal, pretty heavy, hardcore ordeal.
Gosh,
and,
when does the book come out?
Wow, that's a good question. I think we have a publisher. We have done everything but submit 3 chapters to them, which we're getting ready to do. I'm going over the first 3 chapters now to make sure that they're smooth enough to present. And then I'm going to present those, and if that's the case, we're probably looking at sometime towards the end of the year getting it published.
Just in time for the holidays.
Yeah, and it's going to be called Careful What You Wish For.
Oh,
That's the name of it.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, it's
Especially
just Careful
a lot
What You
of
Wish For.
paranormal-
It was a toss-up between that and Surfers on the Quantum Wave. That was another title we played with.
Dude, I like that title.
2 totally different, yeah.
The Surfers on a Quantum Wave is a quote from in the book. It was a quote I made, because I said, you know what, we're just 2 surfers on a quantum wave. It was just, that was kind of like a statement that I made in the book during the process of the event. Because I had kind of a unique perspective on it from both a metaphysical and a physical aspect of it. But that's why, a lot of people ask me if I believe in demons, and I go, yeah, absolutely, I sure do. And they think that's odd. So this book will explain why I believe in demons. And it'll explain a lot about, who I am and what I've been through and why I'm the way I am today and that sort of thing. So it's a pretty good part. It's a good revealing part of my past, that I think people will enjoy. I think people will get a kick out of it.
Well, I know I'm really looking forward to reading it. It sounds like it's an incredible read. I mean, and be careful what you wish for is so true. Too many people out there, and again, I'm not trying to bag on other groups, but there are a lot of people who are too eager to experience things that they're better off leaving alone. I've never experienced it myself. I've been doing this for over a dozen years. I'm grateful that I've never experienced it because I don't know if I would be prepared to handle it. It's just
I'll tell you, it's like I can say this: there are a tremendous number of armchair demonologists out there with little or no real experience or training or background, and one day they're going to accidentally come across something that's very real, not this crap that they're doing now, which is. If you would believe all these demonologists out there, there's probably 500,000 or 600,000 demons active in the United States alone, and there is not. There's actually very, very, very little real demonic activity going on. And when you encounter it, there is no question about what it is. There is absolutely no guesswork. You know beyond a shadow of a doubt what it is. It's that insidious when you deal with it.
Really?
Now, I will say that a majority of these people, if they come across the real deal, they will never want to come across it again. And the fact that they would go out and continue to do it over and over again is very, very, I don't understand it. Because I had one experience, and I don't never want to have another experience again, ever. And today, when I do a situation, if I'm doing an investigation, and there's a suspicion that there may be something demonic involved in it, I pass. I don't go in. I say, you know what, I can't help you, You're on your own.
Well, we've had...
because it's a tough thing to deal with.
It is. We've had several friends of the program that we've had on talk to that have had their own personal experiences with demonic negative entities. Our friend Bill Bean, who dealt with his experience for over 10 years. In fact, beyond that, he had experiences that went beyond that house. Stephen LeChance, the Pickmans, I would not ever want to live through what they lived through, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And what people don't understand with is it's not just experiencing cool, extreme activity. These adrenaline junkies, that's what they want. You're dealing with something that is insanely more intelligent than you are. It's smarter than you.
Absolutely.
And it knows how to manipulate you to cause the most amount of damage.
Absolutely. It's funny, I know both Stephen and I know Bill, so it's funny you bring both of those gentlemen up. But it's a different class of encounter altogether. And I am blessed with knowing, people that have had real demonic encounters. Excuse me. And I also know some religious people, ordained people, like real Catholic priests, Roman Catholic priests even, who have had some experiences in exorcism, removing a demonic entity from a person. And that's a little bit different sort of thing. A person that is inhabited with a demon is a totally different thing than a free-roaming demon. A free-roaming demon that isn't possessing anything, it's just manifesting in an environment, is a totally different and far more dangerous thing than a possession. And it's because it affects a much broader spectrum of real estate. A possession is generally limited to what can be affected by the possessee. A free-roaming manifestation can follow you home. And that's the thing. There's no refuge from a free-roaming demonic entity. There's no refuge. You can't go home or go back to the church and it'll be back there in that inhabited being, that poor human being that's inhabited or possessed. You can go home and it can go right with you.
Wow.
And you know what? You can go back to the church, and if it's pre-Christian, it has no problem going back to that church either.
Yeesh.
And see, that's the thing that people don't get, A lot of it that is of Christian origin, yes, it is dealt with by priests quite adequately, and that sort of thing. But there are things that are far older than the Christian religion. There
Now, David,
are things that are far older than most religions.
Right. Agreed. Let me ask you something, though. How would you define a demon in the scientific sense? And we talk about spirits being energy. Are demons energy as well? I mean, I know I'm going to buy your book. I'm going to definitely buy your book. But I know that, you had this encounter between 85 and 87, so the 2-year span. So you were definitely able to rid whoever was affected by this demon. But where does the demon go? Energy cannot be destroyed. It can't be created. It can only be transferred. Is that the same thing that kind of applies to a demon?
Yeah, it's the same thing. You're literally transferring it from one universe to another. And, it all will make sense if you buy into it. I have this theory called the theory of the multiverse, where you have this big stew pot. And in the stew pot, you have the meat, the potatoes, the carrots. Well, each one of those ingredients is a universe. And then the broth that it's all floating with is like this big broth of exotic matter. It kind of keeps all the universes from bumping into each other too hard, or interfering with each other too hard. Now, bearing in mind, they still bump into each other. And we have recently found bruises on the cosmic microwave background that indicates that our universe has been bumped into by something outside of it, which would indicate that a multiverse may indeed fact be a reality. So, bearing this in mind, if you have all these multiverses in a single pot of stew, then energy can transfer from one ingredient to the other without affecting the balance of energy.
Okay.
For example, our universe is in a constant state of accelerated expansion. I mean, we're continuing to accelerate away from where many scientists believe the Big Bang occurred. Well, see, I don't believe in the Big Bang because the math breaks down several milliseconds before the event arises. So I believe there's a big flow, and I believe there are several big flows. And I believe these big flows are called white holes. And they connect to a black hole in an adjacent universe, which is sucking in matter and energy and spewing it out into our universe. Now, when you have more black holes in your universe than you have white holes, then your universe is going to contract. It's going to start shrinking. When it's the other way around, your universe is going to continually expand, and it's going to continue to expand as long as it's taking in energy. I think universes expand and contract on a regular basis, and they pour energy from, themselves into other universes. Because where does a black hole come out at? Mm-hmm. Where is all of that energy and matter that's being sucked into the dual black holes in the center of the Milky Way galaxy, for example? Where is it going? Mm-hmm. It's not going somewhere else in our universe. It's going somewhere else outside of our universe. So I believe that at the other end of that black hole, there's a white hole in an adjacent universe that's spewing out that energy into that universe, that energy and that matter. And guess what? The whole process of matter going into a black hole converts it all into energy. So when it spews out of the white hole, it's not matter anymore. It's pure energy spewing out of that white hole. So it's very possible that a demon is a form of energy, and I believe that. I believe it's a form of energy that has an agenda, it has an intelligence, and it has a consciousness. So therefore, it's a type of life form. Is it a human? No, absolutely not. It was never a human. It is something different. Having said that, they come from somewhere else. They have to be conjured in. They have to be gated into this reality. They don't just show up on their own. They don't just pop in and say, hi, how's the wife and kids? They don't just take the bus to Miami to go surfing at the beach. Someone has to physically open the door and let them in.
Hey, David, I hate to cut you off.
Someone has to conjure them. They have to do the right formulation that opens the gate that allows them to come in. And they use these terms in these spells and these rituals of gates, opening the door, opening the gate, inviting them in the threshold, very symbolic of a wormhole. Right. I think a lot of the symbolic magic that was used in demonic conjuring from the Middle Ages on, and actually go all the way back to the time of Solomon, who conjured up demons to build the first temple of Israel. And his works, the Apostle of, what is it called, of Solomon, and then Solomon's Lesser Key and his Greater Key, and all of these works that he produced, King Solomon produced, that actually fell him out of favor with God, and but got the temple built. All of these things, these rituals, are methodologies of opening a wormhole to a specific reality where these things dwell and bringing them into our own universe for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people who don't know what they were doing or didn't know what they were doing fooled around with this crap and were successful.
Wow.
And that's why we have some of the problems we have today. If you remember, back in the 60s, there was a huge rebirth of magic. I mean, the whole hippie movement brought forth this whole thing. Wicca was born. Wicca didn't exist prior to the 60s. Wicca was born out of this. All of these New Age movements sprung out of the whole Age of Aquarius movement and this sort of thing. And there was a lot of people that got a hold of a lot of old books and a lot of old writing, and they started playing around and experimenting with these things. I mean, how many friends of mine, turned into witches back then? I'll never know, but I mean, just hundreds of people that I knew became witches. And they started playing around with this stuff. And, the power of intent is an incredibly powerful thing. And whether you get the ritual right or not, I believe the secret is in the power of intent behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So if these people really have a focused power of intent, there's not much that I could say that would make me doubt the fact that they were actually successful in bringing some of this crap into the world.
Wow.
So,
well, David,
I think it's very possible.
David, we've actually run out of time. We've come to the end of the program, which is a shame because we're thoroughly enjoying this conversation. But I was wondering if you could tell everyone where they can get your book and what's the title.
Well, it's called Paranormal Technology, Understanding the Science of Ghost Hunting. And it's available where fine cheese is sold. No, it's available anywhere where books are sold. I just think it's so funny. Everybody says it's available where fine books are sold. No, it's available where fine cheese is sold. But, Amazon.com has it. You can Google my name, and it'll bring up all kinds of different links to it. But if you Google my name and paranormal technology, it will either take you to my website where I have a page dedicated to the book with all the purchase links all around the world, all the different online bookstores. Or you can go to Amazon or, any of your favorite online bookstores, type in paranormal technology and my name, and it'll take you to the book.
Fantastic. Well, I hope you would be able to come and join us at Phenomenology in March out in Gettysburg again.
I was thinking the same thing.
Because we will be there, and we definitely would love to hang out with you in person and talk some more about this.
Oh, yeah, man. No bar too far, no hall too small.
You're going to fit right in.
You're going to be perfect. Well, David, thank you very much for coming on the program tonight. We've really enjoyed talking with you.
Absolutely. Had a great time. Thanks a lot.
Great. Well, and thank you, everybody, for listening to another edition of Unknown Origins Radio. Join us every Monday evening here at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Global Radio Alliance. And we sign off with our motivational quote of the week. Just remember, power corrupts, but absolute power is awesome. Have a great evening, everybody. Bye.
You waxed up.